The mind is a complex machine, like a sky filled with endless clouds, constantly shifting, moving, and never at rest. The mind contains millions of thoughts, memories, desires, and fears, shaped by our experiences and the society around us. It is both a source of great intelligence and deep confusion, depending on how one understands and observes it. The mind is always seeking, questioning, remembering, imagining. It never stops. Even in sleep, it continues in the form of dreams. It functions through language, which is the tool through which we express and shape our reality. Language did not always exist in the way we know it today. In the beginning, humans communicated through gestures, sounds, and facial expressions, much like animals. But as survival required cooperation, words were created to represent objects, actions, and feelings. Over time, language became more structured, allowing humans to share complex thoughts, express emotions, and pass down knowledge across generations. This ability to think and express through words is what has allowed humans to create civilizations, art, and philosophy. Yet, while language helps us communicate, it also limits and conditions us. We begin to think in words, label everything, and divide the world into categories: good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure. These labels shape how we see reality, often trapping us in rigid beliefs and mental patterns. For example, if a child grows up constantly hearing that they are not good enough, this thought becomes deeply embedded in their mind. Even as an adult, they may struggle with self-doubt, believing the words they heard long ago as if they were absolute truth. The mind is also heavily influenced by emotions, which rise and fall like waves in an ocean. Emotions are powerful forces, often arising without conscious thought. One moment, a person may feel joy, the next sadness or anger. These emotions are deeply tied to memory and conditioning. A particular smell may trigger a childhood memory, suddenly filling the mind with nostalgia. A harsh word from someone may stir up old wounds, making a person react in anger or defensiveness. Most people are unaware of how emotions control them, how past experiences shape their reactions in the present. A person who has been betrayed once may forever carry a deep fear of trusting others, even when there is no real danger. A person who was humiliated in the past may hesitate to speak up, fearing the same pain again. These emotions create a psychological cage, limiting how one lives and interacts with the world. Yet, emotions themselves are not the problem. The real issue is our identification with them. When one feels anger, they do not just experience anger, they become the anger. When sadness arises, instead of letting it pass, one clings to it saying, "I am sad," reinforcing the emotion. But if one observes their emotions without getting attached, they begin to see that emotions, like thoughts, are temporary. They come and go like passing clouds. The mind often gets trapped in repetitive patterns. A person who has experienced failure may continue to doubt themselves even when success is possible. A person who has been hurt in a relationship may carry that pain into new relationships, unconsciously fearing the same outcome. This repetition happens because the mind operates based on past conditioning. It collects experiences, draws conclusions from them, and then acts according to those conclusions. This can be useful for survival. Learning from past mistakes prevents danger. But in many cases, it also leads to unnecessary suffering. Take, for example, a person who was once ridiculed while speaking in public. The mind holds on to that memory, creating a fear of public speaking that lasts for years. Even if the person gains knowledge and experience, the fear remains, because the mind clings to the past, rather than seeing the present as fresh and new. But if one can observe their fear without being controlled by it, they may begin to see that the past is gone, and only the present moment is real. Language also shapes how we experience emotions. When we say, "I am depressed," we completely identify with the feeling, as if depression is our permanent state. But if we say, "There is depression in me," we create a distance between ourselves and the emotion. This small shift in perspective can change everything. It allows one to see that emotions are passing experiences, not unchanging realities. In practical life, this means watching the mind without being caught in its movements. Most people live in their minds without realizing it. They are lost in thoughts about the past or the future, rarely present in the now. While walking, they are thinking about work. While eating, they are lost in worries. The mind is always jumping from one thing to another, rarely still. But if one simply watches their thoughts without judging or suppressing them, they may begin to notice something profound. Thoughts are just thoughts. They are not reality. They are like shadows, illusions created by the mind. The moment one sees this, a shift happens. One is no longer controlled by every passing thought. They become an observer rather than a prisoner of the mind. This does not mean suppressing thoughts or emotions, but simply seeing them for what they are. When anger arises, watch it without acting on it. When fear comes, observe it without running from it. The very act of watching brings awareness, and awareness dissolves the power of emotions. Imagine a person who is afraid of being alone. Their whole life they have tried to avoid loneliness, filling every moment with distractions, social media, television, conversations. But one day, they decide to simply sit with their loneliness to feel it fully without escaping. In that moment, they may realize that loneliness is just a feeling, not something to be feared, and the moment they stop resisting it, the fear disappears. Understanding the mind brings great freedom. It allows one to live without being weighed down by unnecessary fears, desires, and conflicts. It makes relationships clearer. One sees how expectations and past wounds create misunderstandings. It makes daily life more peaceful. One is no longer caught in endless mental chatter. In practical terms, this means being fully present in whatever one does. When eating, just eat. When walking, just walk. Not lost in thoughts, but completely aware of each moment. This does not mean stopping thought entirely. That is not the goal. The goal is to see thought for what it is, a tool, not a master. The mind can be useful when needed, but when not needed, it can be still, like a calm lake reflecting the sky. Most suffering comes from the mind's tendency to resist what is. A person who wants life to always be a certain way suffers when it changes. A person who clings to the past suffers when they realize they cannot bring it back. But when one accepts life as it is, without resistance, there is peace. This does not mean being passive. It means acting with clarity, without inner conflict. A person who loses a job can either resist reality and suffer, or accept it and take action with a calm mind. The difference is in awareness. When one is lost in thought, they react blindly. When one is aware, they respond wisely.